right. So welcome everyone. Today we are going to be talking about fields and forests. We're going to provide you with more information about what is fields and forests, and see if it's a good opportunity for you. So a few housekeeping notes. If you do have any questions, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will try to answer any and all questions as they come through, but we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation for any questions that we don't get to. And this presentation is being recorded, so if you miss anything, we will be sending out an email link that you'll be able to look back out later and share with friends and family. So my name is Courtney Miller, and I am one of the Fields and Forest Account Managers. I work with landowners such as yourselves who are asking questions about fields and forests. So we start with the initial intake call, and I walk you through every step of the way until you sign a contract with us. So I'll be talking about the program overview today with you. And then we have Scott Griffin, who's our consulting forester for Fields and Forests. He'll be speaking on how working with the forester works with FNF. And then we have Amy Tomcho, who is our Senior Manager of Technical Operations, and she'll be answering any common questions you may have. So what is Fields and Forests? Fields and Forests works with Georgia and Alabama family landowners to plant and grow trees on their open fields. These open fields could have been previously used for row cropping, cattle production, hay, just fallow fields that you're no longer using, allowing landowners to diversify the income from their land. So Fields and Forests is a program of the American Forest Foundation as part of the Family Forest Carbon Program. All have the same objective to provide financial and technical assistance to landowners to improve the health and value of their forest. So who is the American Forest Foundation? We are a national nonprofit organization that supports family forest owners in caring for their land. You may recognize the American Tree Farm System. They work with private landowners to gain access to forest resources. And the American Forest Foundation is the parent organization to American Tree Farm System. And why do we offer the Family Forest Carbon Program? Historically, carbon markets have not been accessible to small landowners, although 39% of forests in the United States are owned by families and individuals. Private landowners often don't have the funds, resources to unlock the full potential of their land. So FFCP gives landowners access to the voluntary carbon market, which means additional source of income. By supporting landowners in growing loblolly pines and forests, we are increasing the carbon stored on the land, helping to fulfill our mission of creating a meaningful conservation impact while working with small landowners. So a couple of the program basics. It is a 30-year contract length. It is important to note that the contract does run with the land. We do have a 40-acre minimum, and this is plantable acres, 40 plantable acres, and that would be determined by our forestry team. During this time of the program, you work with an FNF contracted forester who walks you step by step through the planting and management process and answers any forestry questions you might have. All upfront costs are covered by Fields and Forests. So this includes your site prep, your seedlings, any associated cost that you would intake during the planting process, as well as a forest management plan. And you receive a $30 per acre annual payment over the 30-year contract length. You also get to keep all timber revenue. So whether that's from thinning or a final harvest, that goes all in the landowner's back pocket. So some of you may wonder, what does it take for a landowner to become eligible? So for landowner eligibility, we're looking for land that has not been forested in the past 10 years. Property that's located within the historical range of Loblolly Pine in Georgia and Alabama. Property that's privately owned in project area that's at least 40 acres. Now we do have what's called a bundle opportunity. So if you do have less than 40 acres that you're considering enrolling, still reach out to us. They can be bundled or clustered with adjacent neighboring properties within 5 miles, and you would still remain a separate contract. And lastly, the project area cannot be subject to any legal encumbrance that restricts timber harvest. So what are some of our benefits to fields and forests for our landowners? Well, first is your financial benefit. So you are guaranteed the annual payment of $30 per acre per year. So if you look over to your right, this is a project planning map for one of our landowners who is interested in enrolling 50 acres. So this landowner would receive an annual payment of $1,500 as an annual payment. And then over the 30-year contract length would receive $45,000. There's also intermediate revenue. So you are able to thin during the length of your 30-year contract. Again, all of that goes back to the landowner. And then also you get to receive a free forest management plan. So this is when you work hand in hand with one of our foresters and making sure that the forest management plan is customized to your own property and your goals. And lastly, by implementing these management practices, you receive high quality timber revenue. So there are other benefits other than just financial. So growing trees is a less labor-intensive opportunity for landowners looking to make additional income, retire, or just looking to explore new opportunities. One benefit is healthier land for adjacent farming, wildlife habitat, and recreation for future generations. You also have the annual payments to help offset the cost of property taxes, mid-management practices, all of which can help you keep the land in the family, but you are able to choose what you use that annual payment for. And we provide ongoing forestry support. So we help with forest stewardship for you, your family, and future generations of the land. We provide extended education from local partners, such as the Georgia Forestry Commission, and we help get you connected to a community of like-minded landowners to share experiences and ideas through the Family Forest virtual community and other media platforms. So many landowners are drawn to this program because it gives landowners an opportunity to leave a long-lasting legacy and pass the land down to future generations. This quote from one of our current landowners in Georgia, Mitch, shows just that. Now I'm going to pass it off to Scott Griffin, who's going to go over how working with the forester and F&F works.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Griffin. I'm a consulting forester with Fields and Forest, and I'm going to talk to you about what to expect as you work with a forester in the program. So what to expect, your initial site visit. So in the beginning, shortly after signing up, you will be assigned a forester, and this forester is going to come out and do an on-site visit. Your attendance is optional, but definitely desired. I'm one of the foresters who does those visits, and it's definitely helpful to have you there to talk about your goals for the property, and we can incorporate that into the process, and it makes everything run real smooth. The forester will walk or drive the land with the main intention to assess the boundaries. Basically, what we're doing out there is designing the footprint of the project. And so we're going to confirm the number of eligible acres. As we go, we can remove areas that you want to exclude from planning. Those might include permanent roads that you want to leave open, wildlife openings, or areas such as maybe a bigger area around your pond or something like that. Those are some things that we've run into that landowners wanted to exclude. We also look for non-plantable areas, which in most cases tend to be either power line or gas line right of ways. So we mark those off on the map as well as unplantable. It also gives us a chance to discuss any additional questions you might have about the program. And just, it could be about the program or it could be just about forestry in general. So it is a good visit there as far as that's concerned. And then the data that we collect will be given to the account manager, and that will be used to create your offer. So what to expect concerning site preparation. So AFF contracts with a forester to oversee this site preparation process. We also contract with local vendors that will handle the site prep work as well as the tree planting. And I do want to point out here the additional value added to the program to you there with a turnkey job that's supervised by a professional forester. So the goal of site prep is to control competition. And in these fields, we're looking at mostly grasses and weeds. And you might be surprised, but these small plants are very serious competitors of these young pine seedlings, and they must be controlled during the first growing season for sure. Normally, we do 1 to 2 rounds of chemical site prep. We may also do mechanical site prep. For example, in a fallow field where there's starting to be some natural regeneration coming in, maybe in some small spots, we may have to do mechanical site prep. Normally, the chemical application is done in the late summer or the early fall ahead of the winter planting. If it is a active row crop field, we may do the spraying post planting, like the spring following the planting. If you have an ongoing relationship with a consulting forester, then we definitely welcome their involvement, to be on site or be part of the process. So what to expect with planting? Loblolly pine seedlings will be provided. We're using some of the highest quality genetics on the market. These trees are normally planted between the months of December and February. And as we select the seedling variety, we definitely consider your geographic region of where your land's at. So the seed source matches to your region. So if you're in the coastal plain or the Piedmont, we'll use a seed source that came from those areas. Again, we're using an AFF contracted forester and planting crew to manage this process. And then we will take any action needed to ensure survival during that first growing season. So one of the main things or not the main thing, but this year we actually did run into a case where we had to do some additional herbicide or chemical work to control some grasses to ensure tree survival. So what to expect post-planting? So your new forest can pretty much be managed under normal prescriptions. So thinning, vegetation control, sustainable harvesting are all permitted. This will be directed by the forest management plan that you will receive, and also directed by a consulting forester of your choice. More value added here definitely with the management plan. You receive a 30-year plan at no cost, which is definitely a roadmap to successfully manage this forest. It will include things like a timeline of prescribed practices such as thinning, prescribed burning, or other practices that would be needed to successfully manage this forest. So thinning and harvesting allowances, we'll dig into that a little bit deeper. A thinning harvest is basically where you go in and you remove a portion of the trees. And the goal of a thinning harvest is mainly forest health. You're trying to leave your best, highest quality trees on the site with optimum growing space. And so this thinning normally occurs from 12 to 17 years of age is when you're going to go in and do that thinning. Your forester will be able to help you decide when the best timing for that is. They're going to consider things like basal area or tree density, total tree height, live crown ratio. Their forester will understand all this and can go in and make that determination. So when the need occurs, the need for the thinning occurs, this would be communicated to AFF prior to the thinning and would include the data that your forester collects to show that the trees are indeed ready to be thinned. This is an area where landowner revenue is generated normally through a thinning harvest. Sustainable harvesting is basically just a complete harvest followed by replanting. And prior to harvest, you would need to submit a timber volume analysis, also known as a timber cruise. You'd need to submit written harvest goals from your qualified forester to justify the need for the harvest. This is why we're harvesting these trees. And so if you decide to do this harvest, this complete harvest before the end of your 30-year contract, then you are required to replant. AFF will cover the cost of the site prep and the replanting. So this harvest will generate your largest amount of revenue during the 30-year journey here. So these are some of the things to expect as you work with a forester. And I'm now going to pass it over to Amy to talk about some common questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And thanks, Courtney, too. Thanks to my colleagues for giving a really thorough overview of this program. As mentioned earlier, I am the Senior Manager of Technical Operations. So my job is to ensure that the science aligns with the practice implementation on the ground. And in going through some of these processes, I get some common questions about the practice. So I just want to cover a few of those today. How exactly is Fields and Forests funded? You heard the amazing financial benefit of not only an annual payment, but also coverage of all stand establishment costs. It's really our ability to leverage the voluntary carbon market, grants that we receive, as well as private donations. And so, as Courtney mentioned, in the past, landowners with less than 5,000 acres, or sometimes even more, were not able to benefit from the carbon market because those companies which are interested in buying the credits couldn't work with that low amount of credits. So what American Forest Foundation does is aggregate all of our smaller landowners that we work with, and we help them sequester higher amounts of carbon, which create those verified carbon credits. And that aggregated portion of credits from many small landowners are appealing to these partner companies who purchase the credits. With those dollars from the purchase, we funnel that back into the landowner for good forest management, and the cycle begins again. So how are credits generated? This is a question I get a lot, and it usually comes in the form of, why would we pay landowners to store carbon in their trees if the trees are already storing carbon, right? If it's just business as usual. So the answer to that is a word called additionality. American Forest Foundation, we're a forestry organization. So what we are actually paying for is for landowners to implement good forestry practices. And if there's any foresters with us today, including Scott, you know that good forestry practices implemented on the ground increase the growth and health of the trees. And so better growth sequesters more carbon. Therefore, that additional carbon that is sequestered is the growth beyond business as usual. And that is the piece that we're quantifying for saleable carbon credits. So we're going beyond business as usual. This, in addition to our unique methodology, which uses dynamic baselines to isolate fields and forests as the single variable that contributes to the carbon removed. This makes our practice very appealing to those carbon buyers, which ultimately puts the landowner in a better position as well, because we have more companies interested in purchasing these higher quality credits. Another question that we get is that why did we choose to work with loblolly pine exclusively at this point with our fields and forest practice? It is the most common native tree species in the American Southeast. It has a fast growth rate. It's highly adaptable. It produces high value timber, and it captures and stores carbon more efficiently than some other species. And I'll add an extra bullet point here too and say that we as foresters, we know how to grow loblolly pine. We've been doing it for 100 years. And so because we know the practice so well, it decreases the risk to you, the landowner, and actually increases our confidence in the carbon equations that we use to calculate those carbon credits. I know a question on a lot of our minds right now in the aftermath of Helene and Milton is what happens in the event of a natural disaster? There, in Georgia particularly, there are hurricanes that come through and sometimes will create a path of downed trees. We're very aware of this, and we do not want the landowner to worry about that piece of the practice enrollment. And so we've built in a natural disaster safeguard within our contract that purely states that there is no penalty to the landowner if those trees that we are sequestering carbon and paying for do end up going down in a natural disaster. And in fact, there are some opportunities where we will actually pay to replant that land that with the trees that may have gone down in a natural disaster. So just wanted to put that out there to not worry about that in terms of your enrollment. Another common question that I hear often is about the timber markets and the confidence in those. And that's great because basically we're setting you, the landowner, up to be a part of the timber market in the future. And so I want to set this up in a couple of different ways. First, looking kind of at the past, thinking about the past trends. I believe that the most confident and secure investments are made in assets with reliable return. And so if you look at this line graph here, you see that sawlog prices in the Northwest have demonstrated noticeably volatility compared with pine prices in the South. So there's a confidence level that you can feel in investing something that has a consistent return. Presently, we are looking at an increased focus on Southern U.S. operations. And so some of you may have heard the Southeast can be called the wood basket of America. And so Georgia and Alabama are not only top regional timber producers, we're actually #1 and #3 respectively in the nation. And so companies recognize this, and they're starting to relocate more and more operations to the South, which really just bolsters the forest products industry as a whole, even more in the coming years. So you can feel confident about not only the present, but also the future operations, being able to support those timber products that you are planning to produce. And finally, looking into the future, the World Bank actually predicts that global demand for timber will quadruple by 2050, which is pretty remarkable. And if you have a 30-year plan with us, you'll know that that's kind of when you're going to be popping out with a bunch of timber on your land and want to have a great return for that. We're doing that in many ways. One of that is that the wood products industry and uses are expanding. So we're kind of beating market fluctuations because we're using both saw timber, which are the larger diameter trees, for building dimensional lumber and that sort of thing, as well as using pulpwood, which is the smaller diameter trees. And those produce products that you're probably quite familiar with in terms of paper and that sort of thing. But you may have heard of a new, exciting new advancement called mass timber buildings. And so mass timbers buildings are creating composite wood, which we've done for a while, but they're actually strengthening its resilience and ability to hold up greater weights. And they're starting to use it to build mass buildings now. And so the exciting thing is that Georgia just actually finished the first Georgia grown, which means locally sourced mass timber building in Atlanta. So I encourage you to go check that out. I can tell you from experience that having been a part of pine production in the South, when I've had dimensional lumber delivered to my house, I was very proud to tell my boys that we had participated in its growth. And that's just indirectly. Imagine, if the trees you were looking at were actually in the building from your land. One final point I wanted to make as well is that a lot of the landowners that we work with are retiring from row crop production or are retiring cattlemen. And you're used to having crops, or you may be used to having crops that have a short season. They're either seasonal or annual production, and you're really dependent on the market at that very moment. Whereas timber is a long-term crop, and there's an ability to delay the harvest that we talked about earlier, that Scott talked about, to really match a market that you want to participate in. So you've got, maybe a 3 to 5 year window, sometimes even more, that you can work with to really hit that market where you want to hit it. So this is a quote. Oops, sorry. That was a quote from one of our landowners that we just really, really liked. And we often hear it's when things are too good to be true, people don't believe they are true, but he validates that this is true. So this is really fun to hear. So hopefully we've enticed some of you to be interested in looking at next steps for enrollment. We've created a relatively simple process for you. Right on our website, you can go to and actually check your own eligibility. So you can check your eligibility without having to involve us at all. We really like to offer that autonomy for you. This is your land, your decision. So we really start in that way, without, interjecting any sort of requirement for you to enroll or anything like that. And so after you check your eligibility on our website, it really triggers a process that you'll end up speaking with Courtney, and she'll walk you through what next steps are. And the fifth step is really just, you will receive an offer letter for the amount of income that you can receive on that 30-year cycle. And so after you sign your contract, yeah, and so one more thing I would say, we, starting next year, are starting to have an annual enrollment cycle. However, if you want to have your land planted in the 2025-2026 planting season, because remember the process for site establishment does take several months. So if you want to have your trees planted sooner rather than later, we do have an enrollment deadline approaching quickly of February 28th, 2025. So post-enrollment, once you receive your offer letter and accept the offer, you'll begin your post-enrollment timeline. And one of the really fun things that, again, because American Forest Foundation has as a landowner focus, we want to make sure that you receive that first payment within 60 days of signing your contract. So there won't be much of a delay there for you to begin to use that funds to benefit your land stewardship. And then the timeline for establishing loblolly pine on your land is very well established. So there's, certain months that certain things happen that you can rely on. So you can plan ahead for that. For example, March through July, we'll end up working with one of your forester, like Scott mentioned, to kind of plan your future there. And then site prep takes place August through October. We'll plant December through March. And then about a year post plant, we'll assess those seedlings to make sure that we have good stand establishment. And then following that, you'll have a very exciting several years watching your trees grow and a forest management plan that really serves to guide you each step of the way in those next 30 years. So again, really encourage everyone to check your eligibility on fieldsandforest.org. You can also, if the website is not your thing, we do have a phone number and an email that you can use to connect directly with us and schedule a call with an account manager to have a one-on-one personalized conversation that hosts to answer your questions about the program and look at your land specifically to see if it's a good fit. I don't see that any questions have come in our question box below, but I do want to take the time to open up the presentation to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
So we do have one question in the Q&A chat asking, is there a sample contract for us to review? We do have a sample contract template that we send out to landowners. Every landowner would receive this before requesting their official contract. We do not have this on the website. The best way to gain access is to check your eligibility with your account manager, do an intake call, and after the intake call, we will send you a contract template.
We actually do also have quite a bit of information online that you can explore at fieldsandforests.org. We actually have a couple of different websites because we have a greater family forest carbon program, of which Fields and Forests is one practice, and there are other practices as well. So you can go to familyforestcarbon.org and learn more about that as well. And I will say too, from a forester's perspective, we really encourage you working with local foresters. And we have a way to connect with those foresters and keep that work local, bolster the local community. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me or the Fields and Forests email as well. I see a question come in. Are you looking primarily for open land? Yes, at this time we are looking for open land. This has to do with our carbon calculations at this time. So open land that is becoming, unproductive or has a retiring crop producer who wants to get into a longer term crop. And if you have any further questions about that, we're happy to get more specific on that. If our property is near but not in the range on your map, does this disqualify us? No, it does not. It just means we haven't reached your area yet. Our capacity to serve landowners in different areas, we don't want to extend that to the point where we are not able to keep a good timeline. So usually this will trigger your opportunity to become listed on an email list that we will automatically notify you if we get in your area. And two, I would also remind you that if you don't qualify for fields and forest, there may be another practice in your area that you do qualify for. So that would show up when you look at your map.
Amy, there is one question in the chat. It says, when it comes time to harvest or thin, is there any support that F&F provides to landowners?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question. Yeah, one of the benefits of working with us is that we provide sustained support throughout your forest stewardship process. And so we recognize that you may be a very new forest owner, right, with this stand establishment. And we want to make sure that you have all the resources you need. So we have actually a whole team dedicated to sustained engagement with you that is there to answer any questions that you have. We also encourage you to maintain your relationship with the forester you work with to establish that stand. And so they would be able to provide you personalized support as well. And then there's also the component that we do like to make sure that when you do need management, that you're able to accomplish it. So we do connect you with local resources as needed. I see a question about the size, the acreage of land that we are able to work with. We have an enrollment acreage target of 40 acres. Now, we understand that some landowners are not, have less acreage to work with. And so we do offer some ability to bundle with your neighbors, for example. It really comes down to can we get the operational cost to make sense if we get equipment in your area. So if we can work with landowners within 5 mile radius of you to sum the acres to 40, we will definitely work with you on that. All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone joining us today. I appreciate my colleagues doing such a great job of explaining this practice that we're really excited about bringing to you, and look forward to working with you hopefully in the future.